Welcome to my channel. My name's Amanda and I'm a late diagnosed autistic and ADHD woman. And this is a vlog where I talk about my diagnostic journey. I want to say thank you to everyone who watched my quick little vlog update yesterday. I wanted to do this video yesterday, but I was having an incredibly low energy day and I really just needed to take a day off for resting. On my vlog, I try to be unmasked as possible, which, after 40 years of masking my autistic traits without realizing it, that's not, it's not easy to just take off the mask. Through Burnout, which I have videos on that go into more details on that, some of my masking isn't available to me anymore. Like things that I used to be able to mask through, I just have lost that ability. Today though, for instance, I put on makeup, which is sometimes a form of masking because honestly, I still feel pretty not great, but I really want to make this video. And sometimes when I put makeup on and I'm looking at myself in the camera, it just does that little mental trick to like, okay, come on, you can do this, you can do this. And I will have plenty of time to rest also today. So there's a balance of like how much when you have a disability like this, how much you need to push through just because life and society, and how much you really just need to take that time to recover. And it's going to be individual for each person to figure that out. But it is April, which is Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month. I think worldwide it's called Autism Awareness Month, but I like to add on acceptance because I think both are important still. A lot of autistic individuals are pushing for it to just be Autism Acceptance Month. But there's still so many people who aren't even fully aware of what autism is besides what's being portrayed in the media. And I think it's very important for people to learn more in depth about what autism is because it's not a rare condition. And there is a very, very likely chance you know somebody who is autistic that either they are undiagnosed or they are so heavily masking around you that you might think that they're just the odd person, that you don't really realize that they are autistic. And I feel like whenever you've got that person in your life that's just a little bit quirky, that you don't quite understand, you don't understand their behaviors, if you kind of consider maybe they are autistic, you might have some more understanding around them. And again, there's an entire several generations that didn't get diagnosed because of autism research being focused on white boys. So just in the last several years, there's been more and more information about autism, and more people like myself are getting diagnosed and understanding why our lives have been like they have been for our entire life. And a lot of them, like myself, kind of get that diagnosis because we hit a burnout. Basically, our mask that we created as a child without realizing it is so hard to maintain because it keeps the cortisol levels in your brain so high that eventually when people have cortisol levels in their brains for that long, it just leads to breakdowns and traumas and burnouts. So a lot of women will, and even late diagnosed men and non-binary people will get a late diagnosis because of hitting burnout. And they're no longer able to mask. And people are like, wait, you're not who you used to be. Now you're acting autistic. Yeah, it's because the mask just shattered. Anyway, it's a long intro. I didn't plan to do it this way, but we're just going to roll with it. I thought it'd be fun to do the ABCs of autism. And so I'm going to break it up into two videos. I'm going to do the first 13 letters today, and then the next 13 the next time I do a video. And I just made these up. I'm not a medical professional. I just kind of brainstormed some letters that I thought would help explain autism. And that's what we're going with, just for kind of to bring awareness and, again, acceptance, because it's important that people stop seeing that allistic, non-autistic brains are superior. They're just different. We're both different types of brain types, and both are valid experiences of humans. So A is obviously going to be for autism. Just to give you a brief definition, autism spectrum disorder is a neurological disorder that affects how people will interact with others, communicate, learn, and behave. My makeup is causing me some sensory issues this morning. And again, if you're new to my channel, I don't edit out my autistic behavior, so you get what you get. Okay, because that's part of learning to be comfortable around an autistic person out in your real world. Although I am going to pause the video and change the lighting in my room because it's feeling very dim, which I think is also why it's affecting my eyes. Okay, so A is also for accommodations. So some of the letters, I have more than one. Autistic people need accommodations to function in society. And some of these include things like noise dampening earplugs or headphones. You'll often see autistic people with big noise dampening or soundproof headphones. Variety of fidgets. Because when we are keeping our hands busy, sometimes it helps us regulate our senses. I have so many fidgets, and I do have a link to my Amazon storefront where I have some of my favorite fidgets linked down in the description box. And anytime you use my Amazon links, it really helps, because this channel is really the only way I can make money. Because my disability, I am not able to hold a regular job. Okay, so A is for autism and accommodations. B is for burnout, which I mentioned a little bit earlier, so I won't go as in detail. But this can happen at any age, and basically it's when a person is masking for so long or so dysregulated, is in a sensory environment that is too intense for them for so long that their brain just hits a burnout. And this is not like a neurotypical burnout where you can just take a weekend and recover and relax. Autistic burnouts take weeks, months, if not years to recover. I was masking for 40 years. It's going to take a long time to let my brain rebuild and rest itself. C is for comfort foods. So this thing is so important. Many autistic people have comfort, or what they call their safe foods. And again, this comes back to sensory differences. Our senses are just so much more intense than an allistic, which allistic means non-autistic brain. And so that means around food, we are going to often have sensory preferences, and a lot of autistic kids would be called picky eaters, or adults even. And it's not picky because like, oh, yuck. It is our brain is telling us this food is not safe to eat for whatever reason. It could be a texture reason, it could be a taste reason. For a lot of autistic people, spicy food like hurts in a way that's not like, ooh, nice spicy. Like, it is physical, torturous pain to eat any level of spicy food. Now, because of the spectrum of autism, there's other autistic people who are sensory seekers with food, and that's where I end up most of the time. I love a lot of textures and spices and flavors, but other autistic people need very, very, very bland foods, and they want the same foods. They eat a very narrow range of foods. But even me, like, I have sensory issues around certain foods, like I cannot eat yogurt, pudding, bananas, cottage cheese, anything like that, unless I add a bunch of crunchy stuff to it, oatmeal, those kinds of things. I have to add crunchy food too. I cannot, like, I will gag and not physically not be able to eat like a tub of yogurt. Just no. The other thing about comfort foods is that a lot of autistic people struggle with fresh fruits and vegetables because of the inconsistency. Like one day a strawberry is sweet, the next day it's sour, while a pretzel is pretty much always going to taste the same. So a lot of autistic people will go to prepackaged foods for the consistency. D is for decision paralysis. So autistic people are bottom-up processors for the most part, and that means we take in all the information and narrow it down, which can lead to decision paralysis from even the smallest things. So even if you're at a ice cream shop and you're trying to decide if you want chocolate or mint, we can sit there with decision paralysis because we are not just thinking in that moment. We're thinking like, when's the next time we'll be able to choose? When will we go to ice cream again? Last time I had ice cream, did I like that flavor? I mean, like our brains will just go on to this huge pathway of all this information and then just leave us stuck. And that's for small decisions all the way up to really, really big decisions. When I have to make a large purchase, it can take me months to make a choice on something. Often because I'm autistic and ADHD, my ADHD will kick in and take over that. And just because the overwhelm of this decision, I'll just make a decision. But if you're autistic without the ADHD, that can be even more paralyzing. E is for echolalia. And echolalia is the automatic behavior where an autistic person will hear a sound and will either say it out loud or will even say it to ourselves. Now, for people who know me on this channel, know that I have multisensory aphantasia, which means that I don't hear sounds in my head. But what that'll look like for me, I still have thoughts. So even if I don't say the sound out loud, like I like the word echolalia, I will in my head be thinking echolalia, echolalia, echolalia over and over and over. Now I don't hear a sound with it for me personally because I don't hear sounds in my head, but I'll just think the thought over and over. My cat, which is hilarious because I got my cat Echo before I knew I was autistic and realized anything about echolalia. And we just named him Echo because we liked the name Echo. But whenever he meows, I have to repeat his meow. Now my other cat Magic will do this too, but she doesn't meow as often as Echo, so I don't repeat her meows as often. But whenever Echo meows, I will say it out loud or I'll say it in my head. And there's just certain sounds that catch my interest and I will repeat them. Now, not all autistic people do this. Again, autism isn't a monolith. None of these traits are going to be consistent across all autistic people. These are just like some common things that a lot of autistic people do, and they might do it in different ways too. E is also for eye contact. I cannot leave that out because it is a pretty big common trait across autistic people. And as a late diagnosed autistic person, I learned how to mask my eye contact, and I would learn to like look at people right here, but I also looked at their lips quite often because I also have auditory processing disorder. And so when I watch people's lips, it helps me hear them better in a way. So once I learned I was autistic and I gave myself permission to look away and not look at the person, then I realized it was so much more relaxing for my brain. When I try to make eye contact with somebody while they're talking, part of my brain is going to am I making enough eye contact? Is this awkward? What are they saying? What do I need to say? Like, more my brain goes to that processing. Also, autistic people are quite literal. I thought because I could mask eye contact, that meant that I couldn't be autistic, because I can do it. And a lot of the old literature was saying autistic people cannot make eye contact. I can, it's just very uncomfortable. And I didn't even realize the extent of the uncomfortableness until I let myself explore not making eye contact. And I was like, wow, this is so much better for me. So another part of the eye contact is autistic people, we tend to, when we're like looking, so when we're processing data, we are big, we take all the data and we focus in on details. But oftentimes when we're like looking at a scene, I'll look at each eye, I'll look at the nose, the mouth. We look at features individually. We don't see the face as a whole. Allistic people take in the whole face. So, and this is how it's been described to me, because I'm not allistic, so I don't quite understand this. But apparently when they say eye contact, when an allistic person is doing eye contact, it's like they're just looking at the whole face in general. They're not necessarily like looking at the pupils of someone's eye. And again, because I'll get down to it when I say L for literal, a lot of autistic people, when we hear about eye contact, we literally think that we're staring into people's eyes. And for allistic people, that's really actually reserved for intimate relationships. So for an autistic person who knows that we're supposed to be giving eye contact, because we hear that and we look at and we're trying to mask it and we look directly into someone's eyes, that can make the allistic person very uncomfortable, because that isn't how they actually do eye contact. So we misinterpreted that data that we hear, and so we still come off as weird because we're not naturally doing it the way that allistic people do. Hope that makes sense. Okay, F is fidgets. So again, this is one that before I was diagnosed autistic, I didn't let myself buy fidgets. I thought, those are for kids. So I would naturally fidget. I would play with my hair. I would play with my earrings. If I was wearing a necklace, I would do that. I'm often twirling rings. There's zippers. There's plenty of ways that autistic people will fidget, and allistic people will fidget too. I mean, fidgeting to some degree is just human nature. Autistic people just fidget a whole lot more. And before my diagnosis, I did so many other kinds of fidgeting that were more socially acceptable. But now these kinds of fidgets are just even more satisfying for me. I really, really love magnets. The pull and push of a magnet to me is extremely just satisfying. And F, very, very important, is functioning labels. So functioning labels are out. Do not call somebody high functioning or low functioning autistic. This is demeaning to autistic people. Now, some autistic people still will refer to themselves as high functioning because that's how they were taught. But this is a little bit of internalized ableism that needs to be broken down. Internalized ableism is just, it is. It's something that happens. It's systematic. It's how our culture has been created, and it needs to be broken down. If there should be no shame around feeling internalized ableism, because it's how you were taught. Breaking it down and dismantling it is the goal, not feeling shame around it. Because when you feel shame around it, you're going to avoid it. Just realize, I might have some internalized ableism around this. This is something that I need to look into. Without removing the shame aspect from it will let you dismantle it. So basically, high functioning autism would be labeled to somebody like me, but that really does me a disservice, because on days like yesterday, when you saw my video, when I was like pretty much spent most of the day on the couch because I just could not function, I was having a low functioning day. But because I'm a high functioning autistic, and I'm using these words specifically right now to demonstrate how harmful they can be, that would make me yesterday feel terrible if I was thinking that way, like, oh, I shouldn't be this way. No, autism is dynamic, and our support needs are going to fluctuate from day to day. So the current language is high support needs and low support needs, sometimes medium support needs. That's still not perfect, but at least it's better. I think it's better if it's used not to describe a person as a whole. Like, so I'm considered low support needs, but there are certain days, like yesterday, where I had more support needs. Like, I needed recovery. Like, if I had to go to work yesterday, which again, I mentioned I really can't hold a regular job because of things like that, I wouldn't have been able to. So, most autistic people's support needs fluctuate. Now, some of us have a baseline of higher or lower, but we all share the same traits. Even somebody who is higher support needs on a basic level, I can still understand and relate to their autism, which a lot of caretakers get really frustrated to hear that, but I do relate. I'm not at their support needs, but I can understand and feel and relate to them. We're all autistic, and when we're using functioning labels, the reason why there's a little bit of ableism in there is because there are certain people who feel like, oh, well, I'm high functioning. That means that I can contribute to society. I am worth it. And that is so demeaning to people who are higher support needs, because they have just as much value as a person who is low support needs. And when you label somebody as low functioning, that's basically telling society, oh, don't worry about them. They don't add value. And that is like an ableist lie, and it needs to stop. So functioning labels, do not use them. When I see them in my comments, it's really hard for me because, like, again, people are on different spots in their journey. And so I need to just like have some grace around that. But in opportunities like this, where I can explain myself a little bit more, I do try to educate on the functioning label use. Okay, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay, so I had to add glimmers, but I'm going to talk about that more with J for joy. But I love the word glimmers, autistic glimmers. But again, I'm going to really talk about that more for J. But the other one for G is Gestalt language. And Gestalt language is hard for me to explain, but I wanted to go ahead and put it in here because it is a very important way that a lot of autistic people process. And again, it has to do with that whole bottom-up thinking. So a lot of Gestalt processors, when they're little kids, like if they go down a slide, they may say, that was fast. And they learn the whole phrase, that was fast. So every time they go down the slide, they say, that was fast. Or if they're running, they're like, I am fast. And they think of it as one set of one concept, and they don't break down the words. Where an allistic kid going down the slide might just say fast or something like that. And Gestalt processors are also more likely to repeat movie phrases that they see. The lighting in here keeps changing. Hold on. No. Okay, hopefully that's a little better. See, something like that in my environment can throw me off and then make me lose my train of thought. But if my environment isn't good, it affects how I'm thinking, because in the back of my mind, the light has been really bothering me today. Okay, so yeah, Gestalt processors tend to learn big phrases before they learn individual word concepts. And this can carry over into adulthood. It's typically seen in children a lot. But there's a lot of like adults who will use memes almost as a way to like communicate a big idea, or movie quotes. Like they want to express something to a friend, but it's like a movie quote sums it up so perfectly. Let's just insert that movie quote. But for little kids, a lot of times when they are trying to communicate to a parent, they might use an entire, phrase from a show to express what they're trying to feel. And again, I'm not very good at explaining Gestalt language yet. It's something I'm still kind of learning about. For H, I have hyperfixation, also hyperfocus. A lot of, this is for autistic and ADHD people. We will have, we'll get into hyperfocuses on a topic, and we'll just deep dive in, and like all our focus will want to go to that thing for a while. H is also hyperlexia, which is a very common trait in autism. So a lot of misconception about autism is that there is...
Most creators would edit something like this out, but in real life, if I'm having a conversation and I forget a word, I cannot just move on. I will get stuck until I can remember what I
forgot the word.
to say.
Hold on.
If someone else starts talking, I won't hear them. Instead, I'll be stuck on needing to finish my thought. I leave this in because it's a very real autistic experience and can be uncomfortable for allistic people.
A lot of misconception about autism is that people with autism also have intellectual disabilities, when that is not true. Autism and intellectual disabilities are separate. There are often comorbidities where an autistic person also will have an intellectual disability, but that's actually in a pretty small percentage of autistic people in general. But one thing that will occur also is something called hyperlexia, where in a very young child, they will acquire language and the ability to read at a very young age. I was hyperlexic as a child, which again is very common. Hyperlexia is just like the ability to learn to read at an early age. I is for interoception. So interoception is your internal sense. So it is your body's ability to regulate your own breathing, knowing when you need to go to the restroom, hunger cues. And a lot of autistic people struggle with being able to sense these things about themselves. I didn't realize this, but for a long time, I eat on a schedule because I just kind of naturally fell into that. And it's because I actually have low interoception. I don't get hunger cues until it's too late. And again, this is going back to that literal thing. I heard that some people don't get hunger cues. Like my son really doesn't get hunger cues. Again, his is even worse than mine. Like he eventually will, but it takes very, very long. I get hunger cues, but it's past the point where an allistic person would get a hunger cue. And so by the time I feel hungry, I am so hungry that I'm getting lightheaded. It's too hard for me to think about what to eat. And then I will eat too fast. And then I don't get the cue that I'm full. So I will overeat. And it's also why a lot of autistic people will have eating disorders of some sort, because and it's not a necessarily eating disorder because we want to look a certain way. It's because we just don't get the hunger cues. So medically, we have eating disorders like ARFID, which is avoidant food restrictive intake disorder. And it has nothing necessarily to do with diet culture. It's literally we're not getting the cues to our brain. Or this with ARFID, there's a lot of sensory, again, problems with food. Okay, so J for joy, which also, again, was the G for glimmers. So one of the amazing things that I love about being autistic is that we tend to find joy in small things. And obviously, allistic people can do this too. But autistic joy is its own special kind of thing. When an autistic person embraces their autism and doesn't worry about social constructs of like whether or not something is childish or not, we love to just feel the good feelings that we feel. And we will take wonder in watching an inchworm go across a stick. It will captivate all of our interests and senses. And it may not be an inchworm for you if you're autistic, but it's going to be something like that. There's going to be something that an allistic person might just walk past that's going to capture our attention and fill us with joy and wonder to a level that a allistic person just, I don't think, experiences the same way that we do. And I think it's one of the most special things about being autistic. And like my therapist says, look for the glimmer. So like actually take time to look for these things in your life. Okay, K is knowledge sharing, also known as info dumping, but I needed a K. So one of the ways that autistic people will communicate is by sharing all the things that we know about a certain topic. And oftentimes for allistic people, this can be very overwhelming and or boring. But for us, it is literally like our love language very often. Us sharing the things that we care so deeply about is a way that we are communicating that we want to spend time with you. And we really want you to share in this exciting thing that we love. L, I've got a lot, so we'll try to go fast with them. L is logical. Oh, my nose is itching. Logical, so a lot of autistic people are just very logical thinkers, which also goes with us being very literal. We often are very literal thinkers. And I put late diagnosis, which I already talked about at the beginning of the video a little bit, so I won't go as much into that. But there's many autistic people right now who are getting a late diagnosis because, again, research was only done on white males, and the only people who were not getting, or who were getting autistic diagnoses prior to like 8-10 years ago were people who were very high support needs. Low support needs autistic people are now getting diagnosed left and right, as we should be, because it answers so much about our life and the way that we've experienced life up to this point. And for M, I have monotone. A lot of autistic people will talk in a monotone voice. We often don't have volume control, so our voice we might be too loud or too low, and our inflection might come across as very flat. And for masking, which I've talked about here and there already throughout the video, masking, though, most autistic people who are late diagnosed had no idea they were masking. Some did. Some people would realize that when they were in public, they had to act a certain way than they were at home. For me, I never knew I was masking. I just knew that something was off, and I always felt like it was an outsider looking in. But the mask was developed by the brain in childhood as a survival mechanism to try to make you fit in, because humans want to fit in. And the last M I have is monotropism. And that's a tendency for our interest to pull us more strongly than most people. And it kind of goes in with like that hyper focus. When like my brain is kind of like focused on one thing, when I have to do something else that's like a responsibility, it is like torturous. Like when I was in the middle of writing my book and I had to stop writing to go make dinner, I just wanted to scream. Like it was like, it's like, oh, I have to stop doing this, but that's like all my brain wanted to focus on. And so doing anything else during that time was extremely difficult. And a lot of autistic people will have this all the time. My monotropism tends to kind of come in waves, thankfully. But for some autistic people, being pulled away from whatever their mind is currently focused on again, kind of goes with task switching, which I'll talk about later in the next video, is so hard. Okay, well, I know this video is a little bit longer than normal, but there's just so much to go through, and I decided dividing it up into 2 videos was better than 3 or 4. Anyway, I hope you learned a lot. I'm going to come back for the rest of the alphabet in the next video. And as you can tell from the beginning of the video, one of my special interests is making these videos, and which I didn't talk about special interest yet, but whenever an autistic person engages in their special interest, it can actually help regulate them, help elevate their mood. And just sitting here talking to you guys, I'm already feeling a little bit better than I was at the beginning of the video. So thank you so much for spending time with me and learning about autism. Make sure that you share this video with friends and family, and happy Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month. Until the next video. Bye, guys.